the item, thank you, Mr. Chairman. The item before 43, we just, with one fell swoop, no discussion, approved $27 million, $580,000, because the contract expires on December 31st. And now which is with respect to MSI Pharmaceutical. Now we come to this item, which is expiring at the end of the year, and the world is changing, and we haven't had a full board discussion in a public forum so we could discuss this, and now we're under the gun. I'm glad we have some institutional memory. Mark, you obviously have been around a long time. You know, we have fought with you call them partners today, but we have fought with our partners for decades. I dealt with this for 6 years on the board the first time I was here. They're not really our partners. We don't have a county hospital. That's the biggest cop-out in this entire dialogue. We've never taken responsibility for taking care of the people in this county because, unlike most large urban counties, like County SC is LA's county hospital. I've taken a lot of people there over the years when I worked patrol. We don't have a county hospital. So we said, we went to our partners and we said, you know, we're going to strike an agreement with you and we're going to be partners, and because we don't have a county hospital, we're going to abdicate all our responsibility for oversight of these individuals, but trust us because we're partners. And yet we're up against the gun with the expiration at the end of the year, and I'm sitting here with people I consider, and I know you do too, because, you know, they all came to see us. Kimberly Kripe from Chalk. I mean, these are not people who aren't distinguished in their own right. Brilliant people running amazing hospitals. So you know, and you probably saw this, we just got a packet, UC Irvine, St. Joe's, Hoag, and Integrated Health. I mean, these are leaders in our community coming up with 3 recommendations. And the primary focus is, you use the words, and I just wrote down what you said, the world will be changing and we have no experience. Wow. If I have no experience in a world that's changing, I'd want to put as short a leash on that as possible so then I could come back and work with my policymakers, that's the board, to decide where we go next, as opposed to delegating and crossing my fingers and hoping good decisions will be made. I mean, we're in this. But when I voted to make the hospitals and the community clinics partners and said, trust us, I feel a huge commitment that really meant a partnership. Now, you went through a very serious medical condition recently. I know it's very painful. And you were out for a while, and everybody knows I went, you know, I found a tumor, they found a tumor on my vocal cords, and where did I go? I went to UCI, and guess what? They zapped that tumor, and I can talk again. And so we have to remember, this is about people. This is about people, not just numbers. This is about people. People who have serious medical conditions. So my question to you is, what is wrong with the recommendations of people I respect? I respect you highly, Mark, so don't take my comments wrong at all. You have a staff recommendation, but they have a counter recommendation. And their recommendation from all the hospitals, they're all the same recommendations. Have you had a chance to look at it?
I've gotten other letters and I've met with them, and I don't have what you have in your hand.
Okay, that's not good. Because I wanted to ask you, like Supervisor Bates asked you to respond to some of these issues. My question, look, we can't negotiate this at 11:45 like this. So my question is, and I don't know if we can get an answer, is, and maybe we could have you look at these letters and give, I'd really like to know what you think about these response. I mean, but I really don't want to take up the time. I'd rather do other county business, let you look at the letters, let you see if this is something that's reasonable, and then we can address it, because I am not comfortable going out 18 months. And I don't think that's right. We have a grave responsibility because Obamacare has completely changed our nation. We also have a responsibility to explain to the public how wonderful it is or how incredibly screwed up it is. And if it's incredibly screwed up in this area that things will be changing, we have no experience, we have a responsibility as the electeds to tell everybody in the world how horrible this is, because that's how you change public policy. But if we don't see it again for 18 months, we as the elected official leaders in this county, we have the platform to tell people how horrible it is. And we have a responsibility to tell people how horrible it is, because if it is as horrible as it seems to be based upon this documentation, then we should all be screaming that we need a response from Washington to fix it. But I can't I can't just say, I get the financial, but there's a moral question about what the safety net is. And if we had a hospital, and if we had all these decades taken responsibility for our indigent population as a county, then this might be a different discussion. But the fact that we pushed it off on our partners, and now they're saying, hey, listen, we can't financially absorb this, I have to take that with very, very deep consideration as well. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Supervisor Nguyen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mark, there's 3 proposals from the hospitals that Supervisor Spitz has mentioned. The first one is to reduce the term of the master hospital agreement from 18 months to 6 months. For me, I actually don't agree with that. I think there could be some discussion between HCA and the hospital. 18 months is too long, in my opinion, but I think 6 months might be a little too short because the Affordable Care Act hits January 1st. And you're right, from staff side, we don't have the data, we won't have that data available to us to at least probably 3 months to be reasonable, and maybe even up to 6 months. So I think there could be an opportunity for HCA to go back and have a better discussion to see if we can lower the 18 months, but yet not go to 6 months. I think there's a good discussion there. The item 2 that they're talking about is what Supervisor Morlock's mentioned is the payment from the interim payments and the final settlements. I guess my question for you is, one, are hospitals obligated to contract with the county? Can they not contract with the county? And second, a third question is, how many contracts at HCA do we pay invoices? We only pay 70% of the invoices, and then we decide to pay the other, 70% of the 90%. Do we do several payments to individuals or companies? So I wanted to kind of see if there's, if that's our common practice. If not, why? And so I think, you know, because my concern is, I hear where staff is coming from, but I don't think we, in general, at the county, pay invoices. If they came in for $1, we don't pay them, I'm just going to throw a number, 70 cents, and then pay the other 30 cents later in the fall. I think if we are going to get an invoice, we should pay our invoice. And then if there needs to be a directive or board staff needs to come back to the board, I think that discussion needs to be. I do appreciate staff in your due diligence in this process, because we don't want to encourage people to go to the hospital as their last resort. That's what we've been doing, outreach and education from not only HCA, SSA, and even on Cal Optima side, to educate individuals. And for you putting the copay at $300, that is an encouragement for these individuals to get Undercover California or some other means and not rely, you know, to the hospital. So there's a lot of things that are in your proposal that I'm in agreement with, but I think there could be maybe some time allowed so that some of the other proposals, maybe a further discussion with HCA and the hospitals to kind of work together, because you're right, we are in partnership. I don't think we can do without hospitals, and hospital can't do without us. Quite frankly, like Supervisor Spitz has stated, we don't have a county hospital, which in my opinion is actually a good thing, given what happens in LA and their county hospital. So I'm not here in any way proposing a county hospital run by the county. But I think there needs to be a partnership, and I think there needs to be further discussion in some of these areas.
Well, thank you for the questions, and for that's both for you and Supervisor Spitzer. Let me boil this down to 3 or 4 things. Number one, there's always a tension between a purchaser and a supplier. We're the purchaser here. the hospitals, doctors, and the clinics. They're the suppliers. You can't, if you're General Motors, you can't produce cars without parts. General Motors is the produce, and they have parts suppliers. It's no different here in healthcare. You asked the other question. So there's always a tension, and I had a business partner once tell me a long time ago that a signed contract is the beginning of a meaningful negotiation. We haven't even got to the point where we have a signed contract. Direct answer to your question, Supervisor, hospitals do not have to sign a contract with us. And some hospitals may opt, it's best for their business model, not to be involved in the medical safety net program. If that is the case, we're required to pay something that's fair and adequate, and we've produced to you a county council analysis, so we're proposing 45% of the Cal Optima. Those rates universally will be higher than what they're getting under contract now in the low-income health plan. So not everyone has to sign a contract with us. We have these two other levels of contracts. We were responding to what the hospital industry was asking us to do. Here's where else it boils down to. They're asking you for 100% of the Cal Optima rates now. They don't want an interim payment. Supervisor Morlock proposed 95%. She's trying to use the wisdom of Solomon and cut the baby in half, to use an analogy.
I don't like cutting babies in half.
Nor do I. Nor do
I have a 10-month. That doesn't sound good.
Nor do the OBs or the surgeons that work in our county hospitals. So that's the thing. We're proposing 90. Supervisor Morlock's proposing 95. The hospital industry is asking you for 100%. If we go with what for example, if we go with what the hospital industry asks us for, the only two that I have available to live within our means, within our net county costs, is that I really would have to slash the rates under the delegation that you give me. Or I have to come back and ask you for more money. Those are the two choices I have around rates. So that boils it down really simply, what one of the asks were. The other asks were they're saying don't make the necessity for a qualifying emergency room visit. Allow us to do what, at least in our meetings, allow us to do what we used to do under the old MSI program, that certain diagnoses would be able to be enrolled in the program at community clinics, and we'd have the opportunity to do utilization management, look at it and say yes or no. That's what it boils down. Those are the asks. Forget the interim payment, pay us 100% of Cal Optima, don't have the qualifying hospital emergency room visit. We're in a post-ACA world on January 1st. It does change. And you are the policymakers. And the other thing, and I'll just stop because I don't want to.
Remember, if you say you're going to stop, you actually have to. There's a.
With one last thing, Mr. Chairman. Well, there's two. There's two.
You know.
Number one, we all should be working together to get people to sign up on Covered California, to take personal responsibility and get subsidized health insurance. That's the first thing.
Got it.
I'll stop there.
And the second?
I'm going to stop. I'm not going to overextend my walk.
Supervisor Nguyen?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Mark, I don't disagree with you. I think there is more opportunities here because at the end of the day, if we don't have these hospitals, the county is forced to pay definitely a lot more than what we're proposing or create our own hospital. So, I mean, there's got to be some ways to keep, a partnership. Because I always, as you know, my comments has always been the more providers, the more options we have. We don't want just one hospital in this county to take care of 3.2 million people. We want a robust number of hospitals, and we don't want two, surgeons in this county. We want, to take care of 3.2 million people. And so I think if it's reasonable, to ask you to maybe, if we can continue this item and have you come back. You're nodding no.
No. We need I apologize. We need something in place for January 1st.
All right. Okay. All right, what's the pleasure of the board here?
My recommendation is we then give him what he needs, but for 6 months, and it comes back to the board. Mark, why don't you, let me just say what their suggestion is, see what you think. It would be direct the agency staff to amend agreements to pay hospitals their certified individual CalOptima rate for services rendered for this 6-month period. This will eliminate the need for interim payments and final settlements that are administratively costly to the county and unjust to hospitals. And then that would direct staff to retain, the second would be direct staff to retain the 30-day notice provisions in the event of any rate reductions. This, coupled with the allowable termination provisions already in the agreement, will respect hospitals' free market business decisions. That's, what's your feedback on that?
Man, if we have not resolved that, look, you said I'm going to read it. That is not a question. That's a statement. He has given 30 minutes worth of feedback on this concept. I think we all get where he's at. He disagrees. I mean, he's made that very clear and actually expounded in great detail as to why and his view of each aspect of the disagreement. So,
Do we have a motion on the floor on the recommended actions?
well, you just said your motion was to give him what he wanted, give the hospital association what they were asking for 6 months. Now,
well, my understanding is that he needs to move forward. What Janet was saying is that of the 3, she did not agree with 1. So it would be, though, instead of delegating it for 18 months, it would be for 6 months at the capitated rate based on CalOptima. But Mr. Rafowitz is raising his finger to me, but the chairman has to acknowledge you.
yes, sir.
If I might, Mr. Chairman, maybe some middle ground is, why doesn't the board direct us? You have staff's recommendation. Why doesn't the board direct us to return to you prior to June, let you know what the experience has been, let you know what the modifications are that you've delegated, that if we've made any modifications or if we're planning to make any modifications, you could give us further board direction in June, which is 5 months into a 6-month term, but we don't have to redo contracts and all the additional work that happens with that. The last question that's left for you as policymakers now is, do you want to give the hospitals 100% CalOptima, or do you want to just go with us on the interim payment? It is clearly the board's decision. But I would prefer that you give us direction to return to you prior to June, let you know what the experience has been. We'll know who signed up for Covered California at that point. We'll know what the Medi-Cal expansion has looked like. I don't even want to start to enter into one other health plan that will be surfacing. It's called the Basic Health Plan.
Nor do we.
It's important to know, Supervisor, Mr. Chairman, because we don't want to be more attractive. We don't want to be the easiest.
Right, look, we get that, but we're here to take action, and if I hear you correctly, and again, I don't want to be short for the purpose of being short, but to accomplish what we have before us cannot be done by talking about that which is not before us and isn't going to be. So let's focus on, if I hear your ask clearly, and it makes perfect sense to me, please authorize us as we've asked, but hearing the concerns of our partners and the board here, you're telling us you will be back before us essentially for a reopener in approximately 5 to 6 months, but prior to the 6 months date, and we'll get a chance to revisit, maybe address any problems that have come up, and perhaps our partners also will be available to come to the mic and maybe clarify some things we can do to make this a better relationship.
You've got it perfectly, Mr. Chairman.
Supervisor Spitzer, I believe you were first up.
Can you clarify then what's going to be the capitated rate? Under the recommendation now, what is it?
It is 90% if you sign the full contract, which will get you up to 100, or 90% of the 75% if you go with the intermediate level. I'm hearing from your board, some of you want to just go with the 100% of the CalOptima rate.
Well, that's the chairman's point. I don't know what I want because we're doing this so close to the end of the year and it's the last board meeting and I haven't, had the opportunity to get this all vetted by you and your staff. We talked about that yesterday. So I don't know, colleagues. We got to give them some direction now but it seems to me that the capitated rate that's recommended is too de minimis, given what the hospitals are telling us. If there are partners, maybe 100% of CalOptima is too generous and will eat down the balance too quickly, but maybe 80 or 90% is appropriate. But I think we should get that decided today. But I don't think it's fair. I think their rate that's being recommended is I get the motivation, but I don't think it's appropriate. So I think we just need to settle that. Mark said that was an outstanding issue. We almost are concluded with this discussion. But John, you seem to have studied this or have an opinion. You think 90 is the right number?
No, that's the current proposal is 90.
All right, well, Vice Chair Bates,
No, staff's proposal is 90.
I don't know what I want, Mark. I want you all to be happy. Anyway, can't we all get along, Anyway, my understanding, you have to come back in January for us to approve the contract on the 14th, our next meeting. You'll be bringing the contracts back, or are we delegating you total authority to sign those now?
Delegating these contracts. We have other contracts associated with this program that are coming to you in January.
I would like to add to the motion that you go with 95%, and I'll tell you why. 90% is conservative. They asked for 100, you said 90. Somewhere in between, especially when you're saying in the final payment, you're probably going to get to these recommended numbers. So let's do that today. Let's say 95% with the guarantee that you will not reduce that, because that's the other trust issue that's here. Because you have total authority, and it could be 90%, but you could reduce it because of the numbers that come in. So I think that's something you need to bring back to the board if your numbers show that you would have to not even do 90, but you would be dropping it because this, issue of net county costs grows, because we're off on the numbers of people that will not get covered California and now be our responsibility. So I think we could push it to 95 if you think you're going to get to 100 in 18 months anyway, and then you can come to us on January 14th if you have some other heartburn over that as you meet with them, because you're going to be talking with them in the interim, and you're actually debating over numbers and projections. Those are not certainties anyway. So I don't know what 90 to 95% means in terms of actual dollars. Do you have that? Because I think that's what John was asking.
Supervisor, that would depend upon the utilization and the conditions
Exactly.
that the people have. Ballpark, it's probably under $1 million.
Well, maybe the 95%.
The second part of what you've recommended, though, not being able to reduce the rate, puts our net county costs at significant risk if utilization is, people don't sign up for insurance on the exchange. We'll be coming back to you for an emergency board meeting to lower the rates if you don't give us the flexibility to do it.
I do think that's okay, Mark. I think that gives a level of certainty in this trust issue that we have with the partners, or we wouldn't even be in this discussion. So if this board has to take that up and be the ones to, reduce it, then so be it. That's our job. So I think if you have to go down, you have to bring that back to the board. That's the concern, the delegation authority. We're starting at 90, and you could give them 85, and we wouldn't be aware of it except in some memo said, guess what, our numbers are so dramatically different than our projections. We've reduced the reimbursement rate. Don't you think that'll cause a bit of a storm? Obviously, the 100-year flood, perhaps. So I'm comfortable with finding a middle ground, and I don't know if there will be a second for that, but I would move us in that direction. That's a substitute motion.
what is the substitute motion? Substitute motion is for 95%,
Yes.
and that is for 18 months?
No. 18 months, but with a report back on the utilization within 6 months.
So,
So if we have to reduce it, we have to reduce it. We should be the ones. Yes.
all right. Supervisor Bates' motion has been made. We have a second. Any other further comments, questions?
Well, go ahead. We can vote, and I just want to make a comment. You want me to make the comment now?
Please.
Mark, if you can, I would actually be interested in maybe getting a memo to see what the numbers is in like 3 months, just out of curiosity, just to kind of look at what ACA is doing. I'm going to ask the same thing with CalOptima anyway, so just more of curiosity to see what the direction, how we're doing in the first 3 months, in a memo.
All right, thank you. That's the comment. There's a motion and a second. Any opposition? All right, seeing none. Colleagues, item number 48.